Dr. Martinez, you're throwing away 15 years of medical training for what? To follow some basketball player around. The chief of surgery's voice was filled with disbelief as Dr. Roberto Martinez cleared out his office at Presbyterian Hospital. This is career suicide. Roberto paused, holding the stethoscope that had been his symbol of purpose for over a decade, and smiled. What his colleagues didn't understand was that watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had taught him something that medical school never could: that true healing sometimes requires leaving everything behind to chase a different kind of calling. The date was March 22, 2024. Dr. Roberto Martinez stood in his pristine office on the 7th floor of Presbyterian Hospital in Oklahoma City, carefully packing medical journals and diplomas that had defined his identity for the past 15 years. At 38 years old, he was one of the hospital's most respected cardiac surgeons, with a reputation for performing miracles on patients other doctors had given up on. But Roberto was about to make a decision that would shock everyone who knew him. He was walking away from medicine to pursue something that seemed impossible to explain. It had started 6 months earlier, during what should have been just another routine evening after a 14-hour surgery. Roberto had saved the life of a 67-year-old construction worker whose heart had failed during a routine procedure at another hospital. The surgery had been technically perfect, but Roberto felt the familiar emptiness that had been growing inside him for years. He was saving lives, earning substantial income, and receiving professional recognition, but something fundamental was missing from his existence. That night, exhausted and emotionally drained, Roberto had collapsed onto his couch and turned on the television, looking for something mindless to help him decompress. Instead, he found himself watching an Oklahoma City Thunder game, something he had never done before in his life. What he witnessed changed everything. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was in the middle of one of his signature fourth-quarter takeovers, systematically dismantling the Denver Nuggets defense with a combination of skill, intelligence, and composure that reminded Roberto of his own approach to complex surgical procedures. But it wasn't Shai's basketball ability that captivated Roberto. It was something deeper. Between plays, cameras caught Shai encouraging teammates, making strategic adjustments, and maintaining the same calm leadership presence whether the Thunder were winning or losing. There was a purposefulness to his actions that transcended individual achievement and seemed focused on something larger than personal success. This kid approaches basketball like I approach surgery, Roberto thought to himself, but he looks like he actually enjoys what he's doing. That observation troubled Roberto more than he wanted to admit. But what happened during the following weeks would force Roberto to confront questions about purpose and fulfillment that he had been avoiding for years. Roberto began watching Thunder games regularly, initially telling himself it was just a healthy distraction from the stress of his medical practice. But he found himself studying Shai's approach to leadership, decision-making under pressure, and the way he elevated everyone around him through his own excellence. During a particularly difficult day at the hospital, when Roberto had lost a patient despite performing a technically flawless surgery, he found himself thinking about something he had observed during a recent Thunder game. Shai had missed a crucial shot in the final seconds of a close loss, but instead of showing frustration or making excuses, he had immediately taken responsibility and talked about what the team could learn from the experience. "We had our chances," Shai had said during the post-game interview. "I didn't execute when my team needed me to. That's on me and I'll be better next time." Roberto realized that in 15 years of medicine, he had never heard a colleague take responsibility for negative outcomes with that kind of grace and accountability. In medical culture, bad results were usually attributed to patient factors, equipment failures, or circumstances beyond the doctor's control. But what really captured Roberto's attention was how Shai's teammates and coaches responded to his leadership, not with criticism or blame, but with increased trust and commitment. "This kid has figured out something about leadership that most people never learn," Roberto thought. "He's making everyone around him better just by being who he is." However, what happened during Roberto's next patient encounter would crystallize his growing dissatisfaction with his current path. Roberto was treating Maria Santos, a 45-year-old single mother who needed emergency cardiac surgery after suffering a massive heart attack. The procedure was successful from a technical standpoint, but Maria's recovery was complicated by depression and anxiety about her ability to support her 3 children while managing her health condition. During one of his post-operative visits, Maria asked Roberto a question that he couldn't get out of his mind. "Doctor, you saved my life and I'm grateful for that. But now what? How do I rebuild everything that's been damaged by this experience?" Roberto provided the standard medical advice about cardiac rehabilitation, medication compliance, and lifestyle modifications. But as he walked away from that conversation, he realized that he had addressed Maria's physical healing while completely ignoring her emotional and spiritual recovery needs. That night, Roberto found himself watching another Thunder game, and once again Shai's approach to his craft provided insights that medical school had never taught him. During a timeout in a crucial playoff game, cameras caught Shai talking to a rookie teammate who had been struggling with confidence after making several mistakes. Instead of focusing on the errors, Shai was highlighting the young player's strengths and reminding him of successful plays from earlier in the game. Roberto watched the rookie's body language transform from defeat to determination, and he realized that Shai was demonstrating a type of healing that went far beyond physical intervention. He's not just trying to win basketball games, Roberto thought. He's trying to help people become the best versions of themselves. But what happened next would force Roberto to make the most difficult decision of his professional life. Roberto began researching Shai's background and discovered stories about his community involvement, his work with young people, and his approach to using basketball as a platform for positive impact. The more he learned, the more he realized that Shai had found something that Roberto had been searching for without knowing it: a way to use his talents for purposes that extended far beyond personal achievement. Roberto started volunteering at youth basketball camps and community health clinics, trying to combine his medical expertise with the kind of holistic development approach he had observed in Shai's leadership style. The results were remarkable. Roberto found that when he approached patient care with the same purposefulness and genuine concern for total well-being that Shai demonstrated toward his teammates, both his effectiveness and satisfaction increased dramatically. But the more time Roberto spent on these community activities, the more he realized that his true calling might lie outside traditional medical practice. During a conversation with Dr. Jennifer Chin, his longtime colleague and closest friend at the hospital, Roberto tried to explain his growing sense that he needed to make a major life change. "Jennifer, I've been thinking about what it means to really heal people, not just fix their medical problems. Watching how Shai approaches leadership and development has made me realize that I've been treating symptoms without addressing the whole person." Dr. Chin looked at him with concern. "Roberto, you're one of the best cardiac surgeons in the state. Thousands of people are alive today because of your skills. How can you think about walking away from that kind of impact?" Roberto's response revealed how much his perspective had shifted. "But what if I could help people in ways that prevent them from needing cardiac surgery in the first place? What if I could use everything I've learned about healing to help young people develop the kind of mental and emotional strength that Shai demonstrates?" Dr. Chin shook her head, unable to understand how her colleague could consider abandoning such a successful and meaningful career. However, what happened during Roberto's final week at the hospital would confirm that his decision was not only necessary but inevitable. Roberto was assigned to perform surgery on James Mitchell, a 16-year-old basketball player who had suffered a potentially career-ending heart condition. The surgery was successful, but during James's recovery, the young man became severely depressed about his uncertain athletic future. Dr. Martinez, "Everyone keeps telling me how lucky I am to be alive," James said during one of their conversations. "But basketball was everything to me. If I can't play anymore, what's the point?" Roberto recognized something in James's despair that reminded him of his own spiritual emptiness despite professional success. Instead of offering empty reassurances, Roberto decided to share something he had learned from watching Shai. "James, I want to tell you about a basketball player who taught me that real strength isn't about being the biggest or fastest or most talented. It's about finding ways to make everyone around you better, regardless of your circumstances." Roberto told James about Shai's approach to leadership, his community involvement, and his philosophy that true success comes from using your platform to lift others up. "This player showed me that healing and helping people can take many different forms. Maybe your future isn't about playing basketball. Maybe it's about using your experience to help other young people facing similar challenges." Over the following weeks, Roberto watched James transform from despair to purpose as the young man began mentoring other pediatric patients and organizing fundraising activities for families dealing with medical crises. That transformation confirmed everything Roberto had been feeling about his own need for change. But what his colleagues at Presbyterian Hospital didn't understand was that Roberto wasn't abandoning his commitment to healing. He was expanding it. Roberto's plan was ambitious and unconventional. He wanted to create a foundation that combined medical expertise with youth development, using sports as a platform for teaching life skills, emotional resilience, and community leadership. The inspiration came directly from observing how Shai approached his role as both an elite athlete and community leader. Roberto realized that the same systematic approach that made Shai an exceptional basketball player could be applied to developing young people's character and life skills. "I want to create programs that prevent the kind of emotional and spiritual emptiness that leads to so many of the physical health problems I've been treating," Roberto explained to his family during a dinner conversation that would become legendary in their household. His wife, Carmen, had been supportive but concerned about the financial and professional risks of leaving such a secure career. "Roberto, we have 3 children and a mortgage. How do you walk away from 15 years of building a medical practice to start something completely new?" Roberto's response demonstrated how completely Shai's example had changed his perspective on success and security. "Carmen, I've been successful by every traditional measure, but I've never felt the kind of purpose and fulfillment that I see in this basketball player's approach to his craft. Life is too short to spend it being successful at something that doesn't align with your deepest values. However, what happened when Roberto finally met Shai would exceed even his most optimistic expectations about the impact one person could have on another's life. Roberto had written a detailed letter to Shai, explaining his background as a cardiac surgeon and his plan to leave medicine to create youth development programs inspired by Shai's leadership approach. "I know this probably sounds crazy," the letter read, "but watching how you approach basketball and leadership has taught me more about healing than 15 years of medical practice. I want to use what I've learned from your example to help young people develop the kind of character and resilience that you demonstrate every day." To Roberto's amazement, Shai not only responded to the letter but invited him to meet in person during a Thunder road trip to San Antonio. The conversation that followed would become the foundation for one of the most innovative youth development programs in the country. Dr. Martinez, Shai said as they sat in a quiet hotel conference room, "What you're describing sounds exactly like what we need more of, people who understand that real success is about making others better." Shai shared his own thoughts about the responsibility that comes with platform and influence, and his belief that athletes should use their visibility to address community needs that extend far beyond sports. "I've been looking for ways to expand my community impact," Shai continued. "What if we partnered on this? I could provide the platform and resources, and you could provide the expertise in youth development and health education." What emerged from that conversation was the Shai Martinez Foundation, a comprehensive youth development program that combined basketball training with life skills education, health awareness, and leadership development. But what made the program revolutionary was Roberto's medical background combined with Shai's understanding of how sports could be used to teach character and resilience. The foundation's approach was systematic and holistic, addressing not just athletic development but emotional intelligence, academic achievement, community service, and health consciousness. Roberto designed curricula that used basketball scenarios to teach decision-making, teamwork, conflict resolution, and goal setting. Shai provided the athletic expertise and served as a role model for the kind of character the program was trying to develop. Within 6 months, the Shai Martinez Foundation was operating programs in 12 cities, serving over 800 young people annually. But perhaps the most meaningful validation of Roberto's decision came during the foundation's first annual graduation ceremony. Maria Santos, the cardiac patient whose question had sparked Roberto's career change, attended the ceremony with her 3 children, who had all participated in the foundation's programs. "Dr. Martinez," she said, tears in her eyes, "you saved my life in that operating room. But this program saved my children's futures. They've learned things about leadership and character that I never could have taught them." As Roberto watched Maria's children receive certificates for their participation in community service projects, academic achievement programs, and peer mentoring activities, he realized that his decision to leave medicine had actually allowed him to heal people in ways that surgery never could. During his speech at the graduation ceremony, Roberto reflected on the journey that had brought him from cardiac surgery to youth development. 15 months ago, I was a successful doctor who felt empty despite saving lives every day. Watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander taught me that true healing requires addressing not just physical problems, but the emotional, spiritual, and character development that prevents problems from occurring in the first place. Roberto looked out at an audience of young people, parents, and community leaders who had been transformed by programs that combined medical expertise with athletic mentoring. Sometimes the most important career change is the one that allows you to use all of your skills and experience in service of something larger than yourself. As the ceremony concluded, Roberto received a text message from Shai, who was traveling with the Thunder but had been following the foundation's progress closely. "Dr. Martinez, watching these young people grow and develop has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. Thank you for showing me how sports can be used for healing in ways I never imagined." Roberto smiled, thinking about how a cardiac surgeon and a basketball superstar had found common ground in their commitment to developing young people's potential. 2 years later, the Shai Martinez Foundation had expanded to operate in 25 cities, with waiting lists of young people wanting to participate in programs that combined athletic training with comprehensive life skills development. Roberto had been featured in medical journals as an example of how healthcare professionals could expand their impact beyond traditional clinical practice. Several universities had invited him to lecture about innovative approaches to community health and youth development. But the validation that meant the most to Roberto came from the young people whose lives had been transformed by programs that treated character development as seriously as athletic training. During a foundation board meeting, Roberto shared statistics that demonstrated the program's impact. 95% of participants improved their academic performance, 87% reported increased confidence and leadership skills, and 92% said they planned to pursue post-secondary education. These numbers represent more than program effectiveness. Roberto told the board. They represent young people who understand that excellence in any area of life requires the same systematic approach that creates great athletes. As Roberto reflected on his journey from cardiac surgery to youth development, he realized that watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had taught him the most important lesson of his professional life, that healing and helping people can take many forms, but the most powerful interventions are the ones that address the whole person. The doctor who had given up medicine for Shai had discovered that sometimes the most successful career change is the one that allows you to use all of your skills and experience in service of something that creates lasting impact beyond what you ever thought possible. And in Oklahoma City, where a quiet superstar continued to demonstrate that greatness is measured by how many people you lift up along the way, they understood that influence can inspire transformation in the most unexpected ways, turning cardiac surgeons into youth developers and basketball games into lessons about the power of purposeful living.